Good morning. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about chapter 19 in Decker's book, Reading Koine Greek. It covers the future tense, which we've not seen in detail yet. And so we can read about the different uses of the future tense form in Greek. The future tense form is a lot like the use of English, but Decker categorizes and labels some of the uses. And so, first off, we see the future tense form used in prospective contexts. This would be like predicting the future. Many will say to me in that day. Matthew 7:22 would be an example that Decker gives. The second use is that of commanding context. You can see the English translation of 1 Peter 1:16 there. Be holy because I am holy. But this be verb is actually a future tense, and it's. I grew up on the King James. I'm old, but I memorized the Ten Commandments as a list of thou shalts and thou shalt not, and so. The King James would have translated this future in 1 Peter 1:16 as thou shalt be holy, for I am holy. So the future tense is used in an imperatival sense. We use that in English quite a bit. When you were a kid, maybe your mom said, listen, boy, you will clean up your room. And she was not predicting what was going to happen. She was actually giving a command. So these are the kind of thou shalt kind of futures. A third use, the future tense in Greek, is used in deliberative contexts. Matthew 21:37 says, they will respect my son. Now, this is certainly not a prediction that the vineyard owner was giving, but he was thinking to himself, he was deliberating, as it were, thinking, perhaps they will respect my son. And finally, we have the future tense verb that is used in what Decker labels temporally unrestricted contexts. Galatians 6:16 in the NIV says, peace and mercy to all who follow this rule. The verb follow is actually a future, and it's not talking necessarily about a statement that's true only in the future, because that is equally true in the present. And so a word that I might use to describe what's happening there is the future is used in a gnomic or universal sense. Now, there's some highly literal translations that will translate that as a future, but most English translations will translate that in English with the present tense. And so I want to talk about verbal aspect. This is taken right out of section 19.3. The Greek future tense form is probably best viewed as aspectually vague. That is, from the form alone, it is not possible to say that the writer is viewing the situation as either a process, that would be an ongoing thing, that would be imperfective, or as a complete event, that would be perfective, or as a state. However, Julius Manti learned under A.T. Robertson, and actually in 1972 I was studying my second year of Greek at an undergraduate level. Yeah, I'm old. And we used Dana and Manti's text. Julius Manti noted evidence that the future tense in Greek actually arose from the aorist subjunctive. The presence of the sigma gives us a clue there. The future rarely occurs outside of the indicative mood in the New Testament. For example, there are 12 examples of a future participle in the New Testament. There are 5 examples of a future infinitive, whereas the future indicative is used 1,609 times. And so mainly we're talking about the indicative mood when we're talking about the future. Okay. Formation of the future, how do you do it? Easy peasy. The future active indicative is formed by taking the stem plus a form marker, which in the case of the future indicative is sigma. Most of the time, there are exceptions. We'll see them a little bit later. plus a connecting vowel and then a personal ending. So you see the stem lu, we stick the sigma in there and then the personal ending. This is what the chart looks like. Future active indicative luo, luso, luisis, lusi, lusomen, lusete, lususin. And so you've got the presence of the sigma that is the sign of the future there. What about the future middle indicative? Also easy peasy. You've got the stem, you've got the form marker, the sigma, you've got a connecting vowel, and then you've got your middle passive personal endings, beginning with ome. And so we've got lusome, luse, lusete, lusometha, luseste, lusonde. And so the endings are exactly the endings that we've seen before. Easy peasy. Contract verbs in the future. They function much like contract verbs in the aorist. That is, the contract vowel, the alpha, epsilon, or omicron, will be lengthened. Then we'll add the form marker, the sigma, and our personal endings. And so, easy peasy. Section 19.17 talks about the future of imi. You can see by the endings in this chart that those are middle endings. Notice at the top of the chart it says future middle indicative forms of imi. Now, a sense of being, there is always a subject affectedness in that verb, but many people will just parse this as a future indicative of imi. You see the endings there. We start with epsilon. That is not an augment. It's just part of the way this is built. And so esome, esse, este, esometha, eseste, esonte. And so endings that you are very familiar with. Formation of the future passive is not so easy peasy because it is a little bit different. You have the stem, and then you're going to have a form marker, which in this case is going to be a theta, eta, sigma, plus a connecting vowel, and then personal endings. And so you see the example there. We've got the stem lu, we've got the form marker thes, theta, eta, sigma, and then we've got our endings. And it should be pretty easy to recognize by the theta, eta, sigma. Guess what? Some verbs have a second future passive, just like the second aorist passive. The only difference in this form is it loses the theta. There are 17 verbs in the New Testament that have future passive forms, and you can see some of the examples of those verbs in sections 19.27 and 19.28. That's a look at chapter 19, and so have fun. Bye-bye.